Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. I'm Andrew, 34 years old. Before all this went down, I thought I had a solid life. Really thought I was doing everything right. This all unraveled over the past 2 years, but before that, things seemed stable. Good, even. I worked as a financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm. Nothing flashy or headline-worthy, but I busted my ass to get there. See, I come from a blue-collar family. My dad worked the railroad for 35 years, long hours, calloused hands, steel-toed boots worn down to the sole. My mom waited tables at the same roadside diner for most of my childhood. They didn't have much, but they scraped together enough to help me through community college. The rest, I earned. Every step of the way. I worked full-time, warehouse gigs, stocking shelves, even bartending sometimes, while taking night classes. 4 years of that grind, and I graduated with honors. Not bad for a kid no one expected to wear a tie to work. I landed an entry-level position at a firm downtown and leveraged it into something better. Plowed my way up. In high school, I played linebacker. Made All-State senior year. I had a couple small college offers, nothing D1, but I chose the academic route. Best decision I ever made. Still, I never let go of that part of myself. The training, the structure, the discipline. Even after school, I kept hitting the gym 5, 6 days a week. Not to post about it or show off. I'm not one of those guys flexing shirtless in the mirror, thirst trapping on Instagram. It was for me. My therapy. My routine. At my peak, I was sitting at 215 pounds, 6 feet 1 inch, around 12% body fat. Not a bodybuilder, but strong. I could bench 280. Deadlift heavy. I liked how that felt. Natalie, my wife, never really got that. She didn't say much at first, but over time, the little comments started slipping out. Why do you need to be there so early? She'd mumble from under the covers when I'd get up at 5 a.m., trying not to wake her. The weights aren't going anywhere. I'd just lean down, kiss her forehead, and say softly, "Go back to sleep, Nat. I'll be back before you even wake up." Looking back now, that should have been a sign. She never tried to understand the things that mattered to me. Not really. We met at a friend's barbecue 6 years ago. One of those Saturday afternoon things with paper plates and too much beer. I saw her across the yard, standing near the cooler, laughing with someone I didn't know. Blonde, fit, perfect smile. She had this effortless confidence, like the world bent slightly to accommodate her. Honestly, she was way out of my league. I almost didn't walk over. Almost. But then she caught me looking. Smiled. That kind of smile that made it impossible not to try. "Hey," I said, stepping up beside her. "Mind if I cut in on this beer monopoly?" She tilted her head. "That depends. Are you one of those guys who thinks IPAs are a personality trait?" I laughed. "Only on Wednesdays." We hit it off. She worked in marketing for a luxury brand, high-end watches or handbags or something like that. She always looked sharp, impeccably dressed, every hair in place. She knew how to talk to people, how to own a room. She was the kind of woman who makes heads turn when she walks into a room. I fell hard for her. No hesitation. Proposed after a year. I thought I was the luckiest guy alive when she said yes. Our wedding? Pinterest perfect. We had the whole vineyard set up, sunset vows, 150 guests sipping craft cocktails. She wore this designer dress that probably cost more than my first car, strapless, silk, imported lace. She looked stunning, of course, like something out of a bridal magazine. During the reception, my dad pulled me aside. He was a few drinks in, slurring just enough to know he meant what he said, even if he didn't mean to say it out loud. "Son, you sure about this one?" he asked, squinting past his glass of bourbon. "She seems a little high maintenance." I laughed, just brushed it off. "Come on, Dad. It's the wedding. She's allowed to be a little extra today." He grunted, didn't press it. But I still remember the way he looked at me. Not angry, not even judgmental. Just unsure. Like he saw something I didn't. Back then, I told myself he was just being old school. He didn't get modern women, strong women, confident women. That was what I told myself. But looking back now, man, the red flags were waving like crazy. I just refused to see them. She got irritated whenever I brought up budgeting. Always rolled her eyes like I was being a buzzkill. I'd be there trying to talk about our future, planning for a down payment, or saving more for retirement, and she'd say something like, "God, Andrew, can we not talk about spreadsheets for once?" And she'd subtly dig at my family, never directly, but enough to sting. Like when we'd visit for Sunday dinner, and she'd whisper, "Your mom still uses boxed mashed potatoes? That's cute." She never showed any interest in what I did. I'd come home drained, talking about the stress at work, markets tanking, client pressure, and she'd glaze over instantly. "That sucks," she'd say, barely looking up from her phone. Anyway, guess what Hannah said at the meeting today? You won't believe it. So I'd sit there, nodding along as she unloaded every petty office drama while mine sat bottled inside. But we had the house. The picture-perfect suburban home with the open-concept kitchen she had to renovate the moment we moved in. White quartz countertops, farmhouse sink, gold hardware, stuff I didn't know existed before she showed me 100 mood boards. And we took those winter trips to Cabo. She'd spend hours getting the right beach shots for Instagram, always turning our vacation into a photo shoot while I just wanted to sip a beer and feel the sun. Her feed was full of us, laughing on a balcony, clinking glasses at sunset, walking hand in hand on the beach. Carefully staged, filtered, cropped. Smiles dialed up just right. Funny how none of those pictures showed her face when I'd tell her I was too tired to go out with her friends after a 12-hour day. And despite all of that, I honestly thought we were solid. Yeah, the bedroom stuff had cooled down. Yeah, she was more interested in her phone than me most nights. But I figured that was just marriage. Happens to everyone, right? We still had date nights, though she always chose the restaurant. We still said I love you, though it was usually me saying it first. We still talked about the future, though her version always seemed to include me climbing the ladder, making more money, affording more stuff. God, I was such an idiot. Here's where everything goes to hell. It all started during busy season at work. I was clocking 60-hour weeks, buried in spreadsheets, analyzing portfolio performances for our biggest clients. Most nights I stayed late. Some weekends, I brought work home. Natalie wasn't thrilled about it. "You're never around anymore," she said one night, arms crossed, her wine glass barely touched. "I'm doing this for us," I told her. "The overtime pay is good, and this project, if I nail it, it could mean a promotion. Less grunt work in the future." About 3 weeks into that insane schedule, I started feeling off. Not in a dramatic way at first. Just this constant exhaustion, like bone-deep fatigue that didn't make sense. My muscles ached like I'd killed myself at the gym, except I hadn't even been to the gym. I'd been skipping workouts, trying to conserve energy for work. Still, every morning I woke up feeling like I'd been in a car accident. I had this persistent headache that just wouldn't quit, dull, pounding, like my brain was pressing against my skull. Advil didn't touch it. And then the chill started. Randomly, in the middle of the afternoon. I'd be sitting at my desk with the sun shining outside, and suddenly I'd be freezing, like someone had flipped a switch inside me. One night, while we were both in the living room, me curled up under a throw blanket, her scrolling on her phone, I finally said something. "Think I should see a doctor," I muttered, rubbing my temples. "This doesn't feel like just a cold." She didn't even look up, just tapped something on her screen and said flatly, "You're always looking for excuses to skip date night with my friends." What? No, Natalie, I've been feeling like crap for days. Then take some Advil and man up. Maybe if you weren't dragging yourself to the gym every morning, you wouldn't be so tired. That was classic Natalie. Everything somehow became about her. And even when she was pretending to offer advice, it came with a side of criticism. I didn't respond. Just sat there feeling small. Weak. Still, I pushed through another week. Tried to stick to some kind of routine, but I could barely finish half a workout without feeling like I was going to black out. My body just wasn't cooperating. One morning, I nearly dropped a dumbbell on my foot. That's when I stopped going altogether. At work, people started noticing. I'd be sweating through my shirt at my desk, in an air-conditioned office. Coworkers gave me weird looks, polite concern in their eyes, but not much else. My boss even called me into his office one afternoon. "Everything okay at home?" he asked gently. I blinked at him. "Yeah, fine. Just fighting off a bug, I think." I wasn't even sure I believed myself anymore. Then the fever hit. Not your average, sniffles and NyQuil fever. This was something else. I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the sheets completely soaked through. My head was on fire, like my brain was boiling in my skull. Every joint throbbed. Even breathing felt like it took effort. I stumbled to the bathroom and fumbled for the thermometer. 102.3 degrees. Not quite ER levels, but definitely not okay. I staggered back to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and tried to explain. "Natalie, I've got a bad fever. I think I need to see a doctor." She didn't even look at me. Just sighed and turned the other way. "Then sleep in the guest room. I have a presentation tomorrow. Can't risk getting sick. There's some soup in the pantry if you want it," she added, already halfway back to sleep. That was it. No concern. No "let me take your temperature." No "do you need anything?" Nothing. I shuffled to the guest room, dragging myself under 3 blankets, shivering uncontrollably. I could hear her through the wall, on the phone with one of her friends, laughing about something like everything was normal. Meanwhile, I was too weak to even get up and microwave the canned soup she'd so generously offered. I laid there, feeling my pulse throb in my temples, trying to will myself into sleep. The next morning, I called my doctor's office. The receptionist was sympathetic but firm. Earliest we can get you in is next week, she said. If you get worse, we recommend urgent care or the ER. I told myself I could tough it out. Just a couple more days. The weekend was coming. Big mistake. At around 3 a.m. on Sunday, I woke up and I couldn't move my right side properly. My arm felt heavy, almost numb, and my leg, it wasn't responding right. I shifted under the blankets, and the room tilted like I was on a boat mid-storm. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I tried to stand up, thinking maybe I just needed to use the bathroom or splash water on my face. I didn't even make it halfway. I collapsed, crashing into the nightstand and knocking it over. The lamp shattered. My phone hit the floor and skidded under the dresser. I hit the ground hard. Knee, shoulder, cheek, all in one messy thud. The noise must have woken Natalie. She appeared in the doorway, leaning against it, arms crossed, her silhouette backlit by the hallway light. She didn't rush over, didn't ask if I was okay, just stood there like I'd spilled a drink at her party. Seriously, Andrew? It's the middle of the night, she said, voice flat, more annoyed than concerned. I was on the floor, trying to push myself upright, but barely able to lift my head. My mouth wouldn't form words right, like half of it wasn't working. I think something's really wrong, I managed to slur. I can't feel my arm. The room's spinning. She rolled her eyes, and let out this theatrical sigh, like I'd asked her for something ridiculous. I'm not your mother, Andrew. Handle it yourself. I've got that client meeting at 9, and I need my sleep. And with that, she turned and walked away, closed the door behind her. I lay there, stunned, not just from whatever was happening to my body, but from her complete absence. 15 minutes, maybe more, I lay there on the floor, trying to will my body to cooperate. My right arm hung uselessly at my side, and my leg felt like it didn't belong to me. Eventually, using mostly my left side, I dragged myself back to the bed, crawled across the mattress, reached for my phone. I couldn't focus enough to use the touchscreen. It was a blur of icons and pain. So I used voice commands, slurring out, call Xavier. Xavier's my older brother. Lives across town. 30 minutes away on a good day. But he made it in 20. I'll never forget the look on his face when he came into that room. Eyes wide, mouth half open like he was trying to keep it together. Jesus Christ, Andrew, he said, crouching down, helping me sit up. Why didn't you call an ambulance? I mumbled something about insurance. About not wanting to overreact. About how I didn't want to wake the whole neighborhood with sirens. Xavier didn't waste time arguing. He just grabbed my sneakers, slid one onto my foot, and wrapped an arm around me. I couldn't walk straight. My leg was dragging, and it took almost all his strength to half carry me down the stairs. Natalie didn't even come out of the bedroom. Not a word. Not a glance. Nothing. Xavier left a note on the kitchen counter. Taking Andrew to Memorial ER, it said. That was it. Short and direct. Like a timestamp on how far gone things were. The ER was chaos. Saturday night bleeding into Sunday morning. That's when all the worst shows up. Drunks, bar fights, car wrecks, people screaming, people passed out. But the second the triage nurse saw me, sweating through my clothes, listing to one side, barely upright, she called for a wheelchair. No clipboard. No wait. They roll me back fast. Machines beeping. Lights too bright. My fever had spiked to 105. My blood pressure had tanked, dangerously low. By this point, I could barely stay conscious. Things moved fast after that. I barely remember chunks of it. Blurry lights, voices layered over each other like static. People in scrubs hooking up 4 lines, drawing blood, adjusting monitors. The ER room felt like it was shrinking and pulsing with my heartbeat. I was too far gone to answer their questions, so Xavier handled it all. Rattled off what he knew of my medical history, which wasn't much, just allergies, no major conditions. I caught words here and there, but they didn't make sense until one of the doctors said it clearly enough for me to hear. Septic shock. That one landed hard. I'd heard it before. It was serious. Life-threatening serious. Someone else mentioned kidney distress. Then they were calling in a neurologist to check my right side weakness. I faded in and out, but I remember Xavier pulling out his phone, pacing near the foot of my bed. He was calling Natalie. Apparently, she'd finally read the note he left and texted him. What's going on? He told her I was in serious condition, possibly septic, and being moved to intensive care. Her response? Which hospital again? An hour later, she walked in. Yoga pants. Full face of makeup. Hair done. Looking like she'd been mildly inconvenienced by traffic or a long line at Starbucks. Not a hint of panic. Not even concern. By then, I was hooked up to so many machines I looked more equipment than human. Multiple 4 bags dripping into my arms. Oxygen monitor on my finger. Heart monitor beeping steadily beside me. A nurse was prepping my neck for a central line. Apparently, that's where they deliver stronger meds directly near the heart. Natalie stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, not even making eye contact. You couldn't have picked a worse time for this, she muttered. I turned my head toward her, slow and heavy. Was she joking? I have that campaign launching tomorrow, she added, like she was talking to a coworker who had called in sick. Is this going to take all day? Should I cancel my afternoon appointments? The nurse, Patricia, according to her badge, froze for half a second. Then she turned to Natalie with this look. Not angry, just baffled. Like she'd heard something so wildly out of place it took her a second to process it. Ma'am, she said, calm but firm, your husband is critically ill. His infection has gone septic, which means it's in his bloodstream. He's going to be here for a while. Natalie's expression didn't change much. She gave this tiny shrug, like she'd just been told her Uber was going to be late. Then she sighed and sat in the visitor's chair in the corner of the ICU room. She pulled out her phone, scrolled Instagram, didn't ask questions, didn't lean over to squeeze my hand, didn't look up while the doctors explained that I had a severe bacterial infection that had gone systemic. I was literally fighting for my life, burning up from the inside out, body failing. And Natalie was out there tapping hearts on beach selfies and leaving fire emojis on her friend's new haircut. Like I was just inconvenient. I have to go, she finally said, standing up and slinging her purse over her shoulder. She didn't come closer. Didn't even glance at the monitors or acknowledge how many tubes I was connected to. I'll check in tomorrow, she added, already halfway to the door. Try not to be so dramatic with the doctors. They're busy people. And then she left. Xavier waited until the door clicked shut behind her before speaking. Are you kidding me? He snapped, voice low but vibrating with anger. You could die and she's worried about a marketing campaign? I couldn't even respond. My brain was foggy, like someone had stuffed it with wet cotton. I just remember watching the monitors flash red and yellow, the beeps speeding up and slowing down like a broken metronome. The infection was wrecking me. They said later that my organs were teetering on the edge, kidneys especially, and that my lactate levels were sky high. That basically means your tissues aren't getting enough oxygen, and your body starts to break down. It's a measure of how close you are to crashing. I drifted in and out of consciousness for the next 2 days. Xavier stayed, as much as they'd let him. He took notes, asked questions, stood in the hall talking to specialists when I couldn't keep my eyes open. He called our parents, 3 states away, and filled them in while trying not to panic them. Natalie, she came once. 15 minutes. I remember her walking in, setting her bag on the chair, and immediately launching into a complaint about the parking situation. It's ridiculous. I had to circle the lot 3 times, she said, like she was talking about bad service at a restaurant. Then it was the nurses. They kept asking me who I was and what I was doing here. Like, hello? I'm his wife. She didn't touch me, didn't hold my hand. She didn't ask how I was or what the doctors were saying. No tears, no concern, nothing. What she did do, though, was take a selfie in the ICU waiting room before she left. I found out later that she posted it to Instagram. Filtered, angled, captioned. Tough times test us all, prayers needed. Stay strong, wife. Steve, the overnight nurse who'd been checking on me hourly, told Xavier that the staff had started a betting pool. 15 years I've been doing this, he said. Never seen a spouse so uninvolved when their partner's this sick. Usually, we're practically begging them to go home and sleep. On day 3, I turned a corner. My fever started to break, and my vitals stabilized enough for them to move me out of the ICU. I was still in rough shape, but the danger of me dying in the next few hours had passed. Xavier texted Natalie to let her know the news. Her response? Great. So he'll be home soon. No visit that day. Just a text. Swamped at work, but we'll try to swing by tomorrow. My parents got there that evening, after driving 14 straight hours through the night, barely stopping except for gas. My mom burst into tears the second she saw me. She gripped my hand like I might slip away if she let go. Dad stood stiff beside her, trying to keep it together, nodding like he believed the machine's beeping meant I'd be okay. But after a minute or two, he had to step out of the room. I could hear him in the hallway trying to keep from losing it. Where's Natalie? My mom asked, gently brushing my hair back from my forehead like I was a little kid again. Xavier just shook his head. They didn't ask again. The next day, the infectious disease specialist came in and finally gave us some answers. I was sitting up, barely, with 3 pillows propping me and a fog still hanging over everything. But I remember the look on his face, somewhere between impressed and concerned. You had a rare complication from strep, he said. Yes, regular strep throat. It likely started as a minor infection, probably didn't even seem serious at first, but the bacteria entered your bloodstream and triggered a condition called necrotizing fasciitis. I blinked at him, unsure if I'd heard right. Flesh eating? He nodded grimly. In your right shoulder muscle. That's why you couldn't move your arm. If your brother hadn't gotten you here when he did, we'd be having a very different conversation. You would have likely lost the arm. Or your life. The words didn't fully sink in. My body was too drained to panic. I just nodded slowly while my mom covered her mouth and Xavier quietly swore under his breath. They said I needed immediate surgery to remove the infected tissue. Because I was still drifting in and out of full consciousness, they asked for my next of kin to sign the consent forms. Xavier explained, his wife, she's unavailable right now. The surgeon just stared at him, then turned to my parents. The look on his face said everything. Disbelief, confusion, maybe even a little disgust. My mom signed the paperwork with trembling hands. The surgery lasted 3 hours. They removed a big section of muscle from my right shoulder. But they saved the arm. The doctor said with enough physical therapy, I should regain full function. I wouldn't be disabled, just scarred. It was a win by all accounts. When I came to in recovery, the lights were dim and the room was spinning slightly. But Xavier was there. So were Mom and Dad. They looked exhausted but relieved. Their eyes were red from crying, but they smiled when they saw me awake. No, Natalie. She sent flowers the next day, not even hand-delivered. A delivery guy showed up with a generic arrangement and a card that read, "Get well soon. Miss you. Love, N." The nurse who brought them in exchanged a look with the charge nurse like they'd seen this before. I pretended not to notice. Pretended the flowers mattered. By day 5, I was still weak as hell but fully conscious. I could sit up for a few minutes at a time. The fever had finally broken. The antibiotics were working, and I wasn't seeing double anymore. I could hold short conversations without passing out. My parents had gone to Xavier's place to rest, promising they'd be back for evening visiting hours. That's when Natalie finally showed. She came in wearing a tailored blouse and slacks, business casual, like she was dropping by between meetings. Not a trace of emotion when she saw me. Not even fake sympathy. She sat in the chair by the window and immediately pulled out her phone, thumbing through it like she was checking the stock market. The doctor came in to explain what came next: extensive care during recovery. The infection had ravaged my body, significant muscle loss, possible long-term heart and kidney issues, a long course of 4 antibiotics, and daily wound care for the surgical site. Natalie kept scrolling. Finally, without even looking away from her screen, she asked, "How long will that take?" Then she glanced up, briefly, from her Instagram notifications. "I have that conference in Chicago next week. The one I told you about months ago," Natalie said, like she was reciting a line she'd rehearsed. "It's really important for my career." The doctor didn't flinch. His tone stayed calm, professional. "Mr. Thompson will need several weeks of recovery at home, followed by months of rehabilitation. He won't be able to return to work for at least 6 weeks, possibly longer. He'll require assistance with daily activities, wound care, and transportation to medical appointments." Natalie's face fell. "But I have that conference. And the charity gala the week after. Andrew, you know how important those are." The doctor turned his eyes to me for a second, then back to her. "Mrs. Thompson, your husband nearly died. His recovery needs to be the priority right now." He left after that, quietly, and the room settled into an uncomfortable silence thick enough to choke on. Natalie didn't say anything, just went back to scrolling on her phone, sighing every so often like she was trapped in the world's most boring waiting room instead of sitting next to her husband in a hospital bed. I watched her fingers move with robotic precision across the screen. Flick, flick, like the situation in front of her wasn't even worth a glance. My mouth was bone dry from the meds. I could feel my tongue sticking to the roof of my mouth. I tried to reach for the water cup sitting on the tray table, but it was just barely out of reach. My hands were still shaky. Every small movement felt like running a marathon. I'd already spilled water on myself twice trying to drink without help. I hesitated for a moment, then asked as evenly as I could, "Natalie, could you hand me that water, please?" She didn't look up right away, just let out a breath like someone had asked her to solve a math problem. Then finally, she raised her eyes and stared at me like I was an inconvenience. "Jesus, Andrew, I'm not your nurse," she said. "Handle it yourself. You've got a call button right there." That's when it hit me, 6 years of marriage. And in the moment I needed her most, my wife had less compassion for me than the night janitor who came in earlier and asked how I was feeling while emptying the trash. Less concerned than the cafeteria worker who noticed I hadn't touched my meal and brought me an extra cup of Jell-O, saying, "You need to keep your strength up, honey." I didn't respond. What was there to say? I just nodded and looked away, pretending it didn't sting. Later, when the nurse came in, she found me still trying, pathetically, to reach the cup. She gently lifted it, held the straw to my lips, helped me take a few sips, then checked my temperature and fluffed my pillows. "Your brother's here," she said a few minutes later. And I don't think I've ever felt more relief in my life than when Xavier walked through the door. He took one look at me, slumped, exhausted, trying to keep myself upright, and then over at Natalie, still glued to her phone, watching TikTok videos with the volume up. And something in his face changed. Xavier's always been the easygoing one in the family. The one who jokes at funerals, who can make a nurse smile after a 12-hour shift. But in that moment, his expression hardened. His jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists at his sides. He looked like he wanted to throw Natalie's phone out the window. "I need to talk to you in the hallway," Xavier said to Natalie, his voice taut with controlled anger. She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath, but followed him out. I couldn't hear what he told her. All I know is that when they came back 10 minutes later, something had changed. Natalie was quiet. Subdued, almost. She didn't say a word to me. Just picked up her bag and mumbled something about a meeting she couldn't miss. She was gone before I could even ask what that was about. Xavier stayed until visiting hours ended. Helped me eat the sad excuse for dinner they'd brought in, even though my appetite was shot. We talked about nothing in particular. TV shows, random memories from high school, dumb stuff that didn't matter, just enough to keep me tethered to normalcy for a while. Before he left, he paused at the foot of my bed. His expression had shifted, serious now, like he'd been holding something in all evening. "Bro," he said quietly, "I found something you should know about." I looked at him, heart sinking. "How bad?" I asked, already knowing from the look on his face that whatever it was going to hurt. He stepped closer and gently squeezed my good shoulder. "Focus on getting better first," he said. "We'll talk when you're stronger. I've got your back. You know that, right?" I nodded. And then he left. That night, for the first time since being admitted, I cried. Not from the pain, though there was plenty of that, but from the realization that the person who was supposed to love me most in this world couldn't even be bothered to hand me a cup of water when I was too weak to reach it myself. 12 days. I spent 12 days in that hospital, fighting my way back. The infection had ravaged my body. I lost 22 pounds, mostly muscle. I could barely walk to the bathroom without needing to catch my breath. My arms trembled trying to hold a fork. The mirror showed a stranger, pale, gaunt, sunken-eyed. Marcus, my physical therapist, started coming by on day 6. Big guy, buzz cut, no-nonsense attitude. "This is going to be hard. Andrew," he said bluntly. "You were in great shape before, which probably saved your life. But you've got a mountain to climb to get back there." We started small, embarrassingly small, just lifting my arm, squeezing a stress ball, standing up from the bed without getting dizzy. Every task felt like a battle, and even the tiniest victories left me exhausted. But Marcus had this way of pushing without breaking me. "Your body's been through war," he told me one morning, adjusting the strap on my sling. "We need to respect that while challenging it to rebuild." Xavier came by every day, never missed. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes just himself. My parents, too, had flown in and were staying at his place, coming to the hospital daily. My boss called a few days in, told me not to worry about anything on that end, that my job was secure and they'd hold the line until I got better. "Just focus on recovery, Andrew. That's your only job right now," he said, and I almost teared up. It felt good to be seen, to matter somewhere. Colleagues sent cards. One guy I barely knew from HR organized a food delivery schedule so my family wouldn't have to worry about meals. A care package showed up with a tablet loaded with movies and puzzle games. No note, just from your team. That meant more than I can explain. Dave, my best friend from high school, drove 3 hours just to sit by my bed for the afternoon. He brought beef jerky, a bag of Skittles, and a terrible joke about hospital gowns. We didn't talk about the infection. We just laughed, quietly, about nothing. And Natalie? She visited 4 times. 4 times in 12 days. Her husband almost died, and she could only be bothered to show up 4 times. Each visit was shorter, more impatient. She acted like I was doing this to her. She did bring me clean clothes once, but just stuffed in a plastic grocery bag. Not folded, wrinkled as hell, like an afterthought. Like I should be grateful she even did that much. The last time she came, she stayed for 20 minutes, most of which she spent complaining. "I had to cancel my hair appointment because your mom asked me to pick up those bandage things," she said, her fingers tapping through Instagram without looking up. "I mean, seriously, I don't understand why she couldn't just order them online. It's not like I don't have my own life to deal with." I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy. I just focused on the stress ball in my hand, doing the grip reps Marcus had taught me. My shoulder ached, but I welcomed the distraction. The day before my discharge, Xavier pulled a chair up beside my bed. He looked tired, real tired, like he hadn't slept much. He waited until the nurse left the room before speaking. "I need to tell you something," he said. I sat up a bit straighter. I already knew this was going to be bad. The look on his face gave it away. He rubbed the back of his neck and glanced at the floor. "I went to your place to grab more clothes and I used Natalie's laptop to print out your insurance forms. Couldn't find yours." I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. While I was printing, a message popped up. He hesitated. It said, "Can't wait for tonight. He still doesn't suspect anything. Bring that lingerie I like." I blinked, but didn't say anything. He continued. It was from Jason, her trainer. Of course it was. Jason. Tribal tattoos, permanent tank top tan lines, protein shakes in both hands. The guy who grunted like he was lifting a truck every time he bench pressed. Natalie had started training with him 8 months ago. Said she wanted to tone up. Xavier's jaw tightened. I dug deeper. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo gallery. She didn't even delete the stuff. Hundreds of messages, man. Pictures. Hotel receipts. Straight up pornographic texts about what they were doing. Where? When? He looked away for a second, swallowing. Some of them were in your house. In your bed. My stomach twisted, but I stayed silent. I don't even think I had it in me to feel shocked anymore. Just cold. Empty. There's more, Xavier said, softer now, like he was trying to cushion the fall. In some of the messages, she talks about you. He met my eyes. Says you're weak. Too emotional. That you're not man enough for her. That she needs a real man who doesn't bore her with talk about retirement accounts and budgets. He held up his phone and showed me the screenshots. I didn't even have to zoom in. I recognized her typing. Her tone. Her sarcasm. There it was, plain as daylight. Natalie, my wife, the woman I nearly died still thinking about, joking with her lover about how I'd gotten soft and boring since we got married. She said she settled for financial stability, but needed excitement elsewhere. That line hit harder than anything else. Not the photos. Not the messages. Not even the fact that they'd been using our bed. No, it was that sentence, her truth laid out with the kind of brutal clarity you only use when you think the other person will never read it. She didn't marry me for love. She married me because I was safe. Predictable. Steady. And then she went looking for chaos to feel alive. But the worst part? The most recent messages were from when I was in the ICU. While I was literally fighting for my life. Half-conscious, hooked up to machines. They were making plans. Jason had written, sorry to hear about Andrew, but since he's in the hospital, does that mean you're free tonight? Her response, definitely. Xavier's staying there playing the protective brother, so the house is empty. Bring wine. I didn't react at first. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. I just sat there. Like a switch flipped. I knew you needed to know, Xavier said, sliding his phone back into his pocket. But I wanted to wait until you were stronger. He looked exhausted. Angry. Protective. The kind of brother who'd take a bullet for you. Then go find whoever pulled the trigger and make sure they didn't get a second chance. There's more at home, he added. I took pictures of everything before she could delete it. I nodded slowly. I wasn't angry. Not yet. That would come later. Fury like lava just beneath the surface. But in that moment, all I felt was clarity. Cold, pure clarity. Like someone had finally cleaned the window I'd been staring through for years. The puzzle of my marriage came into focus, every jagged piece snapping into place. 6 years. 6 years of making excuses for her. Of convincing myself her distance was just her personality, that I needed to be more understanding, more patient. That her lack of interest in my work, my family, my goddamn life was somehow normal. It wasn't. None of it was. I need your help, I said quietly. I'm not going back to that house. Xavier didn't hesitate. I've already got it covered. Mom and Dad are with me on this. We've got you. Later that night, while the nurse was checking my vitals, she paused and looked at the monitor. Your blood pressure's up, she said gently. You feeling okay? I gave a humorless chuckle. Just found out my wife's been cheating on me. She froze for a second, then placed her hand over mine. Oh, honey, she said, shaking her head. While you've been in here. That's not a wife. That's a placeholder till the right woman comes along. I didn't say anything back. Just squeezed her hand and looked away. The plan came together fast. Natalie thought I was being discharged the next day. She probably had another spa appointment or marketing pitch circled in her planner. But the doctors actually wanted me to stay one more night for observation. That gave us a 24-hour window to move. Xavier called Steve, our old buddy from high school. We played football together, and he'd gone on to become a hell of a divorce attorney. The kind of guy who didn't blink twice before wading into the legal trenches. Steve showed up at the hospital that night with a folder tucked under one arm and a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He didn't waste time with small talk. Got everything ready, he said, dropping into the chair beside my bed. Power of attorney so Xavier can act on your behalf while you recover. Authorization for the bank to secure your personal accounts. And this, he tapped the folder, is the start of the divorce paperwork. Preliminary stuff, but solid enough to get the ball rolling. He leaned in, voice low but steady. Don't confront her yet, Andrew, he said. Not until you're stronger and have everything in order. She's shown you who she is. Believe her. That's what Steve said before he left that night. I signed everything. My hand still trembling from the nerve damage and weakness, but the signature came out clean enough. Good enough for the courts, good enough for me. Steve promised to file first thing in the morning. Andrew, he said, pausing in the doorway, I've seen a lot of divorce cases in my time. But this is cold, man. You deserve better. I didn't reply, just nodded, my throat tight. The next morning, while Natalie was supposedly at work, though, according to her phone location, she was at Jason's apartment, Xavier, along with our cousins Tim and Eric, went to the house. They didn't trash the place, didn't take anything that wasn't mine. We weren't here for revenge, just clean extraction. They took what was undeniably mine, my clothes, personal items, my grandfather's watch collection that I'd inherited and treasured. The stuff that mattered. My diplomas, awards, all my important documents. Nothing that could be disputed. Xavier had already rented a small ground-floor apartment just a block from his house. Easy access. First floor. No stairs. An accessible bathroom with a walk-in shower, which made everything safer for someone like me who was still recovering. Mom came over right away and stocked the kitchen with all the right stuff. Lean proteins, fruits, vegetables, vitamin supplements. Foods to rebuild strength. Dad set up the bedroom with an adjustable hospital-grade bed. Said he'd found it at a medical supply place on short notice, better for my shoulder and easier to get in and out of. Tim, who works in IT, made sure the place had a strong internet connection and set up a new laptop for when I was ready to start working remotely again. No pressure, just the tools waiting when I needed them. Eric installed grab bars in the bathroom and even added non-slip flooring. You fall once, and I'll never hear the end of it from Aunt Laura, he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Everything was done with care. Thought. Love. When Natalie found out I'd been discharged to Xavier's instead of coming home, she was pissed. Not worried. Not concerned. Just angry. She called immediately, her tone sharp. Why would you do that without telling me? She snapped. I'm your wife. I had everything ready for you here. Lie. Xavier had already told me what he saw at the house. My side of the closet was packed with her yoga gear. The guest room, where I'd been staying before landing in the hospital, still had the same dirty sheets on the bed. The fridge had 3 bottles of wine, half-eaten takeout containers, and 1 open yogurt. That was it. Nothing resembling a recovery setup. No meds, no groceries, no signs that anyone had even cleaned, let alone prepared for a post-op patient who'd nearly died. I kept it simple. I texted her back. I need time to get stronger. Staying with Xavier for now. Her response came within seconds. Is your family turning you against me? Not are you okay? Not what do you need? Just immediate blame. Accusation. Like the only possible reason I wouldn't want to come back to her was that someone had gotten into my head. She couldn't imagine, even for a moment, that I might be thinking for myself. For 2 weeks after that, I focused entirely on getting better. Physical therapy every morning. Protein-heavy meals to start regaining lost muscle. Short walks, first to the end of the block, then a bit farther each day. I rested when I needed to. Took every medication exactly as prescribed. I did everything Marcus told me, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Natalie and I didn't talk. No phone calls. No visits. Just silence, broken only by the occasional short, factual text. Picking up prescriptions today. Doctor's appointment rescheduled to Tuesday. Insurance paperwork came in. Nothing else. No warmth. No real questions. No apologies. Just cold, brief factual texts. She swung between anger and manipulation like a pendulum gone wild. One moment, she was furious. You're being ridiculous. Just come home, she'd snap. The next, her voice softened, dripping with fake concern. I've been so worried about you. Don't you care how this affects me? People are asking questions. I saw the post she put up on social media, the prayers for my husband's continued recovery, the blessed wife life hashtags. Her Instagram told a story that didn't match reality at all. While I was relearning how to do basic tasks, holding a fork steady, walking without dizziness, she was busy posting about holding down the fort and taking care of everything while my man recovers. In truth, she hadn't even asked what medications I was on. Meanwhile, Xavier had hired a private investigator. The PI documented multiple rendezvous between Natalie and Jason. But that wasn't all. There was a second guy, a partner at her marketing firm. Apparently, I wasn't man enough for her, so she needed 2 replacements. Steve was busy building a rock-solid divorce case. In our state, adultery alone doesn't automatically give you better terms, but abandonment during a medical crisis combined with misuse of marital funds, that was a different story. She'd been buying her boyfriend's gifts with our joint account. By the end of those 2 weeks, I'd made significant progress. I could walk around the block without getting winded. I was lifting light weights with my good arm. The surgical wound was healing well. Most importantly, my mind was clear. The fog of illness and medication had lifted. I could think strategically again. The day I finally felt strong enough, I called her and asked to meet at a coffee shop near Xavier's place. I chose a public location deliberately, both for witnesses, in case she made a scene, and because I didn't trust myself to be alone with her in my apartment. Not because I'd hurt her, but because I wasn't sure I could stay strong if she turned on the waterworks. She showed up looking perfect, as always. Designer jeans, an expensive blouse, hair and makeup flawless. But her eyes widened when she saw me. I was still 15 pounds down from my normal weight, the surgical scar visible just above the collar of my shirt. But I'd started looking healthy again, and more importantly, my eyes were clear. No more brain fog, no more weakness, just clarity and purpose. What is this dramatic exit about? She demanded, sitting down across from me with that sharp edge in her voice. You nearly die and then decide to blow up our marriage? Are you having some kind of breakdown? Her eyes narrowed. Because this behavior is not normal, Andrew. I studied her face. This woman I'd loved for 6 years, the woman I'd planned a future with. The same woman who couldn't be bothered to help me drink water when I was too weak to help myself. The woman who'd slept with another man in our bed while I was fighting for my life in the ICU. Without a word, I slid a folder across the table toward her. Inside were the PI's photos, screenshots of text messages, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing gifts she'd bought for her boyfriends with our joint account. On top was a particularly damning text exchange from the day I'd gone into septic shock, her complaining to Jason that my neediness was interfering with their plans. Her face went white as she flipped through the evidence. I sat silently, letting her see it all, the secret credit card she'd opened in my name, the hotel charges, the texts mocking me, calling me weak, boring, not man enough. The conversations planning their meetups while I was hospitalized. I know everything, I said calmly when she finally looked up. I filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow. Your stuff will be packed and moved to storage by the end of the week. The house is going on the market. Her face went through a fascinating series of expressions: shock, anger, calculation, and then, suddenly, an attempt at seduction. She reached for my hand across the table. Andrew, baby, I made a mistake. I was stressed and scared with you being so sick. It didn't mean anything. We can work through this. Maybe see a counselor. I pulled my hand away. You slept with another man in our bed while I was in the ICU with organ failure, I said quietly but firmly. Then you slept with your boss while complaining to your friends that I was milking my illness for attention. There's no working through that. She switched tactics instantly. Her eyes hardened. You've been so distant, always at work or the gym. What was I supposed to do? You barely touched me for months. And then you get sick and expect me to be Florence Nightingale? I'm not built for that. You're right, I said, standing up. You're not built for it. That's why I'm leaving. The man she thought was too weak to leave her just did. I walked out, leaving her sitting there with the folder of evidence. Xavier was waiting in the car outside. How'd it go? I asked Xavier when I saw him that first night after the confrontation. He shrugged, a half smile with a shake of his head. Exactly as expected. I wasn't surprised. Natalie tried every angle. Excuses, seduction, blame shifting. Classic Natalie playbook. That night, the texts started flooding in. First pleading, then angry, then threatening. You can't do this to me, one message read. I made one mistake. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The divorce was ugly, just as I'd anticipated. Natalie threw everything at me, claiming I was mentally unstable from the sepsis, that I'd been emotionally abusive, that I'd abandoned her. But the judge wasn't impressed. When we submitted the hospital security footage showing her scrolling through Instagram while doctors explained my critical condition, it was a turning point. Then came the texts between her and her boyfriends, openly discussing my weakness while I was hospitalized. That was the final nail in the coffin. The judge awarded me the majority of our assets, and Natalie got hit with my medical bills. Karma's first delivery. Meanwhile, Natalie's carefully constructed life started unraveling spectacularly. Her affair with Jason blew up publicly when his wife found out, and she went nuclear on social media, tagging friends, family, and their workplace. Turns out Jason had been married the whole time. His wife discovered the affair after finding receipts for jewelry he bought Natalie with our joint credit card. I couldn't help but think how ironic that was. Natalie's marketing firm wasn't thrilled either. When they uncovered that she'd also been sleeping with one of the partners, she was asked to resign. Gone were the fancy title, the expense account, and the status that came with working at a prestigious agency. Jason dumped her immediately, of course. He begged his wife for forgiveness, claiming Natalie had pursued him aggressively and that he'd made a terrible mistake. The partner at her firm? Already engaged to someone else. When everything blew up, he denied everything, claiming Natalie was unstable, making things up for attention. Typical damage control. I watched it all unfold from a safe distance, neither gloating nor intervening. By then, the divorce was finalized, and I'd moved on with my life. But mutual friends kept me updated on the highlights, and every now and then, I'd catch social media updates from people we both knew. But karma? It wasn't done. About a year after the divorce, Caroline, my new girlfriend, and I were moving into our new house. An upgrade from my post-divorce apartment, with enough room for her home office and my expanding home gym. Then Xavier called. "Dude, you won't believe this," he said, excitement clear in his voice. "Natalie just got fired from her new job." "What? Again?" Turns out she'd been bad-mouthing her boss to colleagues, not realizing the boss's assistant was within earshot. I shook my head. Seriously? The same boss who'd taken a chance on her despite the scandal at her last job? Xavier continued. And the assistant? She'd had enough of Natalie's entitled attitude. Recorded the whole thing on her phone and played it for the boss. Natalie got escorted out that day. Yep, no job. Mounting debt from her lavish lifestyle, which she kept up despite the pay cut. And her reputation? In tatters. I sighed. Figures. Natalie's been reaching out to mutual friends, Xavier said. Spinning some story about how she made a terrible mistake and wants to apologize to you. Chris, one of my friends, told me over beers, she keeps saying she was going through a mental health crisis while you were sick, that she wasn't herself. Claims she's gotten help and wants to make amends. I ignored it. Too busy living my life with Caroline to care about Natalie's redemption tour. Caroline and I were planning a trip to Yellowstone, something I'd always wanted to do, but Natalie vetoed every time. Too few luxury hotels, not enough Instagram opportunities. We planned to camp in a tent, hike during the day, stargaze at night, the kind of authentic experience Natalie would have hated. Then the text started. First to Xavier, then to my work email, then from unknown numbers when I blocked the previous ones. I miss you. I made the biggest mistake of my life. You were always the strong one. I see that now. Please, just coffee. Let me explain. I'm a different person now. I've grown. I'm in therapy and understanding my patterns. I laughed out loud at that one. The only pattern Natalie needed to understand was her fundamental selfishness, her inability to see others as anything but props in the movie of her life. Xavier suggested I get a restraining order, but it hadn't quite reached that level of harassment yet. Besides, I knew Natalie well enough to know that she'd eventually get bored with the rejection and move on to another target. Her attention span for anything that didn't immediately gratify her was remarkably short. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.